If you're tired of paying many SAASes a monthly subscription fee, this video is for you. I'm going to share with you a great resource for understanding what are the open source alternatives to your most loved and used software as a services. We're going to cover the alternatives to Zapier, alternatives to Vercel, alternative to Airtable, and much more. But before we start diving into all the alternatives, let me show you the benefits of using an open source project or product in opposing to using and paying software as a service. There are pros and cons. Let's cover them and then start moving into some examples. So first of all, I ask Claude. Easiest thing to do is just asking Claude, what are the benefits of open source products over proprietary SaaS? So when comparing open source products to software as a service solutions, there are several potential benefits to consider. First of all, cost. Open source products are often free to use and modify, potentially leading to significant cost savings. Customization and flexibility. Users can modify open source code to fit their specific needs, allowing for greater customizations. Transparency. So basically you have the source code available for review, which can lead to better security through community scrutiny and faster bug fixes. Community support. Many open source projects have active communities that provide support. You can check out documentation, join Discord, etc. Avoiding vendor lock-in, which is very important. I had many instances in which I used a specific vendor, and then when I wanted to migrate to a different solution, I had to pay a lot of money, or it was just impossible to migrate. Data control, kind of related with open source, you have more control over your data and where it's stored. Longevity, not necessarily agree with this, but it depends on the use case. Even if the original creator stops supporting the project, the community can continue development of the software and it still remains valuable. This is correct, but sometimes when the project is backed by VC, it is useful for the longevity. Learning opportunities, so you can access the source code and actually use it as a resource, educational resource to understand what's going on. Scalability, some open source solutions can be more easily scaled as they don't typically have licensing restrictions. And interoperability, open source products often adhere to open standards, making it easier to integrate with other software. Now, obviously, there are also downsides. So limited support. Sometimes when you don't have the technical skill, it's better to pay the software as a service, and then you will get probably better support instead of relying on the community. User friendliness. So very often the open source projects are less polished. Sometimes there is a feature gap between the SaaS and the open source, because the open source is basically built based on the needs of the community, but sometimes the SaaS that you're using has more features or different features that you don't have. Integration challenges, hidden costs. While the software itself is free in open source projects, you need to pay for the hosting, etc. And also maintenance, and also you pay for the technical time that you put into managing the project. Security responsibilities, you're responsible for your own security, so you're self-sufficient, which sometimes can be a challenge. There is a lack of guarantee. Maybe the documentation is not as good, and slower development cycle. This really depends on how the project is. Is it very popular? If the project is very popular, so it's going to move very fast because people are creating issues and creating adjustments to the code. Compliance and liability. In some industries, using open source software may complicate regulatory compliance or raise questions about liability in case of issues. And the roadmap might be less predictable because there is many sources of truth. I'm not sure if I agree, but in some cases it can be correct. Now, all in all, in some instances you should use SaaS, and some instances it would be better to go with an open source solution. In my opinion, most of the time I try to look for an open source solution, and for doing so, what I found is this website, which is called Open Source Alternative 2. And basically, you can come here and look for a specific category, whatever you want, and then it will give you open source solutions that are available. So let's say I'm writing Airtable right here. It proposes different Airtable solutions, which is one of them is no code DB. And then you can come here very easily, go to the GitHub project and see exactly, read the documentation and see exactly how you can start working with the project. Now I've kind of created a list of noteworthy alternatives. So the first of all is Coolify. Coolify is a hosting solution, an alternative to Vercel. Many tutorials about Coolify, definitely check it out if you're building web apps or websites. It's pretty useful and actually works pretty well. So this is the first thing. Another alternative that I wanted to share and I showed you in like a few seconds ago is an Airtable alternative, which is called No Code DB. An alternative to Zapier and Make, Integromat is N8N. I use N8N very often to create automations. It's very powerful, very useful. It works great. Just as good, if not better, than Zapier. Alternative to Microsoft Office is LibreOffice. And if you want, you can just find them very easily. I will leave all the links. I have all the links right here. I will share them in the video description, and you can just find them very easily in GitHub. Instead of Slack, you can use Mattermost, which is similar to Slack, just an open source solution. Instead of Salesforce, you can use ERP Next. Instead of Jira, you can move to Plane. And instead of Notion, you can check out AppFlowy. And instead of Zoom, use Jitsi. These are like noteworthy alternatives, open source alternatives to very popular SAASes. Here's the list, which I will share in the video description. And if you're looking for anything specific, you can just check out, as I said before, open source alternatives, and you can sort and look whatever you want. Let's say Shopify. And we have here different Shopify alternatives. Obviously, WooCommerce stands out, Magento, PrestaShop, they are all great solutions. A lot of people are using WooCommerce, as you probably know. I use it for my Shopify store, not Shopify stores, but e-commerce stores, and definitely very useful. That's it, guys, for today. If you have any suggestions, any open source projects that you've been using lately. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, I use continue.dev instead of Cursor, continue.dev, which is a Cursor alternative. It's an AI coding assistant. Obviously, CloudDev, which I have many videos about, is also open source. So many great alternatives in the open source game, open source space. People often overlook this, but this is why I wanted to share this video with you guys. That's it for today. Until next time, keep on automating.